Oh, hello. Jason, turn your camera on. Hi, everyone. It's Amanda. I guess I've appeared on two of these now, so somebody said it's okay for me to host it. So I brought in two of my friends to help me with my plot for Anarchy. Um, and usually this makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to give them a second to go ahead and introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Barry Behar, founder, visionary, leader at Relentless Solutions. I've been in the MSP industry for as long as it's been called that. I was a VAR long before that. I'm here to share and be part of the community and help move this community live thing along with Amanda for her first time hosting. So thanks.
Jim's a lovely man. Thank you, Jim. And this is the opposite end of the spectrum. We'll bring Jason.
Thank you. I'm Jason Kane. I'm a solution architect, chief engineer. I work for an MSP, been in the industry for about 20 years now. Before we were at MSP, we were a break fix shop. So I've seen this company evolve from very small break fix to a larger, more mature MSP. And hopefully here to provide some insights. And this is also my first time, so.
Yes, a lot of first time for everything here. See, it's really funny because when Josh was the host that I work with, when he explained to me like how this goes, he likes to say, I like to have differing opinions. I like to have people who are, at the opposite of the spectrum sometimes, not necessarily just in how the MSP is, but in how they think. And so when I said what I said earlier, I was saying there's Jim over here who's, a lovely guy. And then there's Jason who likes to tease the crap out of me. So like between the two of them, like I feel like we could have some differing opinions here. I guess we'll find out. All right. So let's jump into the first one. So this Reddit threads was interesting to go through. I found a lot that was that kind of spoke to me. This one here specifically. Just got off a call with a client who insists mission critical workflow still requires a fax line, not scanned to email, not e-fax, a literal analog fax machine plugged into a copper line. Oof. Yeah. This person's asking, like, is anyone else still fighting the good fight against fax machines? And I'm going to ask you guys, do you guys still have any clients that you support with fax machines?
One.
How about you, Jason?
Just one client.
Yeah, so we still see this a lot in healthcare and government. And unfortunately, we don't have any control over the workflow. The items have to be submitted via fax.
Yeah. And the same for us. We have some that are healthcare that are in the same, but your one that you have, Jim, is that healthcare or?
Nope, just very old school and refuse to let go of paper. And it's really, we've shown them the usage is ridiculously low volume. They have a combination of e-fax inbound. Some people that have an e-fax license get no faxes in an entire year. They won't cancel those lines. And they have one physical fax machine because they need to stick a piece of paper in and fax it to whomever, and they probably do that once or twice a week. But they've wanted to figure out how they could improve their process around it. And I'm like, it's easy. Just say we don't fax anymore. But it's hard. They just can't get out of their own way.
Yeah, I think for us, we have mostly the healthcare people. So it is people that are like in compliance with whatever government regulatory thing that they have to be in compliance with. But we do have one client like what Jim's talking about. And it was really interesting when I was thinking about what kind of questions or how I wanted to dive into this was like, this person is really frustrated, right? And it could be a fax machine, it could be anything. But how do you handle when security says this is not the right thing to do anymore, but the client says, but this is what I want, right? Because, they're saying fighting the good fight, but, are you fighting your client? Like, what do you do in these scenarios?
Yeah, that's a hard one because it doesn't just occur, that sort of journey does not occur only with topics like faxing. Anything related to security, it's a balancing act between convenience and security, and rarely are those two things in the same sentence happily. It's inconvenience or insecure. It's not convenience and security. So it's just difficult. Some people won't come along without kicking and screaming, and other people, they get it, but they're just slow to adopt, and they're willing, but it's a little bit of slow adoption because it's not just them, it's them and their org, right? The person we're interacting with does get it, but pushing it around their org is sometimes where the challenge lies.
Yeah.
How about you, Jason?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of that. I think you can also, sort of leave it at that, so to speak. And if your client simply says, look, this is what we're going to do, you just have them sign off on the risk. They just have to accept that if you want to do it this way, instead of the way you should be doing it, that there is risk associated with this. And you explain the risk and you have them sign off on it, and you just move forward. Maybe you try and revisit that conversation once a year or something.
I think I'm hearing something too in this post. Like, I'm hearing that this is the frustration from the tech who has to support it, right? But also, if you think about it, I mean, sure, it sucks, but like, that means they need us too, right? Like, I always think of that point of anytime somebody gets frustrated, I'm like, but that's the reason they need us. So like, there's that. And then I also think about how many times, and maybe I could just ask you guys this, how many times have you moved to somebody to something that's supposed to be new and better, and it's not, it's more complicated because there's more moving parts, and therefore it's not as reliable as the old thing.
Well, that part was a little bit true with the advent of e-faxing, moving from, say, sort of topical to faxing. When people were used to the paper, and now it's coming in email, and it's coming to like a shared mailbox or to a different location, it's a little bit less in their line of sight, or it's not in their known workflow. And even though you put them through training, as the usage starts to taper off, they'll forget, or they'll get a new system and forget to link in that mailbox or what have you. So the risks are not just security risks. The risks of broken process or loss of visibility, or in some cases, loss of productivity, or things that didn't surface during the initial conversations about the change.
Yeah. And I think realistically, if clients were going to do everything that we wanted them to do too, like, that's a whole nother weighted question about projects and how much that costs them too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, Jason?
No, nothing really to add to that.
You guys are agreeing too much. Before we get to the next topic, find the fight in you, right?
Trust me. Keep going. We'll find a topic that will push a button.
All right. I think we're ready to go to the next one here. All right, we have a client that keeps calling my direct extension asking for tech support with his iPhone. We don't support your personal cell phone, but okay. And he also refuses to press 1 for technical support. No, instead he calls in, wades through the menu, enters my direct extension, and leaves me a message in my voicemail. I have been out of office all day today. I'm not frontline support. I am not that great with iPhones. And we have a team of technicians in the office waiting for customers just like him to call. And to top it off, you can tell from his voice that he's annoyed I haven't called him back yet. What does he think I am, his personal slave? Oh, this one made me laugh. Before I ask my questions, any thoughts about this?
MSP and personal slave, that's telling about the person. A lot of us in the MSP industry, we dive in head first, and we care so much about the client. We sometimes have to say, we care more about this subject than you do. So sometimes we do that to ourselves, right? We turn ourselves into that point of need, right? And sometimes it works out well with great customers, and sometimes you get the 1 or 2 stragglers that want you to solve everything, including how to tie their shoelaces. I think it's relevant or topical, because I think this happens to everyone at an MSP, from the original founder owner trying to grow his business that never can get out of that front line, all the way to the brand newest person who just doesn't ever want to talk on the phone, and they get one customer happy, and all of a sudden the customer doesn't want to speak to anybody but that person's brand new and doesn't know half the stuff that end customer needs, but they've now established a relationship, and when they don't check back in, suddenly they're mad. So
yeah.
So agree.
You see this too, Jason?
Yeah, agree mostly. Other things that happen here are sometimes the customer will get a hold of a cell phone, during the onboarding process or something, and they will never, ever stop calling or texting you on that cell phone, to the point where we have used apps on phones that do auto text replies, like please call the main number. We don't allow dial by name or extension in our phone tree anymore. We actually largely don't have a menu. You just kind of call in and you get a live person, so you don't have to wade through a menu. But
I mean, that's good. That's good in Zoom, right? For stopping this, but also for clients getting to someone's quickly, right?
Yeah. And some other things, sitting in on these client conversations, these QBRs that are happening, some of this forward thinking, advisory, guidance type conversations, I hear a lot of customers, and most of our customers are small or maybe mid-sized businesses, but they have this notion that they like to work with other small businesses. And the reason for that is because they can reach out and get a person. So it's almost like, because we're a small business, because that's what we do, it's kind of expected that you should have like an assigned person, one throat to choke, so to speak. Not that any of us want our throats to be choked, but
ideally not.
I don't know about you, Amanda, but in your, you were the business owner at your MSP when you were frontlining it at the onset, right? And a year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, your entire role has changed. You now have staff. How do you position that messaging to the customer without ticking them off? And I've done it with some customers where I've just had to be like, look, I want to support you and your business, but you have to let me use my staff to do that. And sometimes that goes over well, and sometimes it doesn't. So I wonder how that's been for you.
I'm going to be the dissenter here. I'm going to be the dissenter, okay? Because I agree in theory, but it really should depend on the clients that you're dealing with, right? So like, I'll give an example. So it was mostly Brian that would have those kinds of relations because he was selling, right? So when you're selling, you're the person who's the one that they talk to. So they have that kind of relationship. The only time that I would get involved directly with the client was if the sale was big enough to warrant explaining our processes and how they would work, and or in the case where I might have a personal relationship. You two know me well enough to know that I talk a lot. So I know a fair amount of people. So when there was that personal relationship, I'd be involved then. Or if there was a problem or breakdown in service, I am known as being good at hard conversations. So if a client needed some, how do we word this gently, correction, then usually I would get brought in to have that conversation. So when those kinds of things are established, I actually would give out my cell phone. I did make myself a point of contact, but with the caveat and the structure around it, like, I'm not service. I will not. You call me for service, that's not going to happen. But if you call me because you're upset because of the thing we talked about, or you call me because whatever, like, I'll be there for that, because that's relationship management. To Jason's point, like, a lot of people deal with an MSP, especially a certain size MSP, because they like that comfy feeling of, I'm a small business, you're a small business. And then we can turn around and, reciprocate that feeling of what it means to get support from a small business. I don't know who on LinkedIn is talking about how much I talk, but whatever. This is the point of me being a host. But besides the point, I think that there's balance in both. I just don't think it should be text. I don't think tech should ever be giving out their cell phones, because I want to protect the resource that we have and the burnout that's possible. And when a client has the ability to end run around and continuously go to that tech, then you don't always get visibility. Like, because sometimes when you pick up the phone, have like a 2-second conversation, it doesn't end up in a ticket. But how many 2-second conversations are you having in a day? So like, I think it depends. The difference between owner and technician, I think, is a little bit different. Same for account manager. Obviously their role is more in line with that. So yeah. Do you have any? Do you make that exception for them?
I do make that exception when it's necessary, but I find oftentimes that it's just a moment of venting, and in those cases, I don't mind. But when there is a true breakdown in communication, or a true failure on our team to deliver, or the customer's lack of clear articulation or expressing what the problem is and conveying the pain point clearly so that our tech can help, you know, those become difficult waters to navigate. I definitely hate the loss of a ticket or bleeding time because people just take a call on their cell phone. And, you know, I've actually said to new hire techs, don't give out your cell phone. It's for your own good. Don't do it. And by the way, you can say to a customer, I'll get fired if you call me on my cell phone, so don't do it. You know, it might not really be 100% the truth, but it's in our terms of service and it's in their, you know, employment manual that they shouldn't do it. So we just should be respectful of the clients should be respectful of individual cell phones.
Yeah, I think too, that's that thing. I can't remember which one of you were saying it, but in the first early days of working at MSP, because you can sense how much everybody does, a technician really does want to feel like they're giving something back. They want to like jump in and put their whole heart into it. So it's not surprising that they end up trying to take on more than they can chew. But like, if you want to be in it for the long haul, MSP wise, you kind of gotta pace yourself, right? Yeah. Okay, are we ready for the next one, guys?
I am.
Okay. So this one's an interesting one. I feel like it's MSP related, but also maybe just this industry related, like technology. So visited a potential new client this morning, mid-sized construction firm. First thing the owner asked us was if we were planning on selling to PE anytime soon. Curiously, I asked him why. His response was that his previous MSP was with him for over 10 years, and he was very happy with them. PE came in and bought the old MSP, rolled them up into a larger rebranded firm. 2 years later, he said the staff that worked at the old MSP are all gone, service levels dropped, while IT costs almost doubled. So, like, I personally found this really interesting that a client would have even like attributed that to PE or like earmarked that as PE being a factor. And I guess I just wanted to know, like, have you guys heard anything like this from clients? Have you ever been able to take clients from PE back to MSP?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of myself as a client and the vendors that we work with. I tend to not like when our vendors get acquired because support goes down, costs go up, you know, the exact same complaints leveraged here. So, you know, we're evaluating some software right now, and a vendor I won't name had a recent demo, and the very first thing out of their mouth was, we have a commitment to no acquisition for 10 years on a rolling 10-year timetable. And
I know which vendor it's based on.
Yeah, and it was this interesting take. It's like the very first thing you say, because I guess there's just a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen to this stack when you get acquired or assimilated. You know, everything's going AI. Am I going to be able to talk to people? Am I going to get support? Are my costs going up? There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. People like to be sure of a decision they're making. And, you know,
well, I think it goes to that thing we were just saying about, you know, the person who wants to deal with a small business wants to deal with a small business. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. I'm going to get into this in a second. I don't know if you've seen it done well, but like, I've seen it done wrong a lot of times. I've seen it done well a handful of times. I think the wider you make something, the more you have to appeal to different interests. So what do you think about this, Jim? Have you run into this?
Yeah, you know, like, because we're in this industry and we have the bad taste in our mouth from what's been happening in our industry from vendors downward, I don't have like a hard, fast opinion on whether or not, you know, I don't know the answer. I don't know what the future holds. I don't like my immediate answer in general is no, I have no intentions of selling my business today or tomorrow. However, I am no fool. I am a businessman that has only so much romance in him about the business. If some PE or non-PE comes forward with an absurd amount of money, I'm not a fool. I will probably do the right thing, but at the same time, that would not be my intention, right? Like, my intention would be to stick around and at least for a good transition period and offer the types of service. And I would do the diligence on which PE it is or not. If it's just a smaller, another MSP that I'm acquiring or being acquired, there has to be synergy and there has to be continuity, because that is what customers want and need. And the main reason we know this is because we haven't had this trickle down to us and we know how bad it feels. So I wouldn't want to be the proponent of that in my business for our customers.
But do you have that? have you had any clients come to you who like were upset because they were being dealt with by a PE-backed MSP?
I have not personally, but other people in my org may have, like during a sales outreach or something like that, but I personally have not.
Have you heard of that at all, Jason? Like anybody say that?
Yeah, in fact, we have one clients in the last year or plus who have said, we prefer you because you're not PE, but you're a small business. We used to have a small business. They got acquired. Things went south. We want to go back to a small business.
Yeah, I think there is like, so like I understand the appetite or what's the word I'm looking for? The thought process of what we've experienced from the traumatic side on the software side, creating the impression that it does. But I've actually seen it in orgs that I won't name where they are PE backed, but the leadership is very strong to structure that PE where they still have control. They don't give away more than they should. They're accountable in the sense that they get good business advice from firms that are sound, right? Like to Jim's point of, making sure that you're working with the right people, the right, like doing your due diligence. Like that's an important piece too. I know that our MSP has been approached by PE plenty of times, and the couple times that we've entertained it, and it's always a consideration of a partial sale, right? Not necessarily a full sale, something that still keeps you with skin in the game, and so it gives you the capital to be able to make certain decisions or growth, whatever, within your company. So I think that like there's plenty of, and I won't name them, but there are several groups that I've seen that leave the control in the owner's hands. And there's the dog, that leave the control in the owner's hands and allow you to still continue that level of service that you would have given your clients, that keep you there because they understand that what they were originally investing in was that small business, right? But the reality is that scaling an MSP at any size is really difficult sometimes because, every stage that you get to it's a different animal. It's like a different set of problems, a different like org structure, all those things change. And then you have to teach the people that are with you that have retained all that knowledge how to change with that as well. So it's like another complexity on top of it. That costs money sometimes.
The pivots are hard for everybody, the customer, the employees, the people that are either acquiring or being acquired. Everybody suffers through some pain. So there's a little bit of empathy that should go around. But at the same time, I think this person is like, they've already felt this pain and they don't want to go through it again. Yeah. And so that's where the empathetic part of like being a business owner and having had that feeling trickle into us, I don't want to be the proponent of doing that outbound,
Yeah. I think MSPs, we generally are very much people who learn by osmosis, though. Like anybody who makes it in this industry for any length of time has to learn by watching what goes on and like take it and assimilate it into making some lesson out of it. And I think that's basically what we've just said in this section is like we learn, whether or not we're going to do it, that's part of the lesson. But then if we are going to do it, what are going to be the things that inform us or we ask questions about so that we don't make the same mistakes that we've seen? And that's like MSP technology life, I feel like. Learn by doing, right?
Yeah. Trial by fire, but somewhat by choice, right? Because that's what actually motivates and drives us, right? It's that starvation for whatever's next technologically or whatever, shiny object. But it's usually because it's in the name of progress. At least I can say that. It's usually because we're seeking better.
Yeah. So the next topic that we have, we're gonna move to the next one. And I think it's funny because it's the shortest one, but I think it could be the most, I don't know, we'll see. It could be spicy. I have a quick, easy question. What might be the okay ratio of tech people for 2,000 endpoints? And that would be approximately 200 servers, multiple customers, of course. Thanks for the info. So I love me an operational maturity metric question. I am really intrigued because I know there's like, I don't know, 500, I'm just exaggerating, systems that exist out there that tell you exactly what this number should be. But I'm just curious, how do you guys decide this in your own organization? How have you guys come to this number? How many techs per endpoint?
So I'll take a crack at it. I think that a lot of these metrics lack context because not all MSPs are created equal. and you may not offer the same services, that may not require the same amount of support. You may not include the same types of things in what you do and what your scope is. So I think context is a missing thing when this question gets asked. For us, for that size, it would be about 6 total, engineer support, whatever you want to call that role, because we offer a lot of services. Now, that may be too many techs for some MSPs who might be trying to slim out, or they offshore some of the support. But for us, that would be about 6.
Yeah, I sort of don't play those particular games. We're not just an MSP. We are still a lot of a VAR. Everything is through a value add. We do a lot of consulting, custom development, business process change, collaboration, training, implementation, integration. I mean, so many things. And we have people that are somewhat specialized and some people that are somewhat generic. And the ones that are generic might not only do MSP generic work, they might do consulting generic work, right? We don't silo 100%. Our org chart is not exactly, the L1 tech. Is it just you work in a pod and you work with this audience of customers? You're working in a team, collaboratively working through whatever's up this week, this month, with our projects, with our service ticket flow for our audience of customers. And if there's a new one onboarding, they do get a little bit extra love because we want to get through the onboarding. But the truth is that it's not a hit or miss. It's like, to Jason's thing, it's 6, and here's the 6. I'm putting it with a note on the wall, 6 to cover 2,000. We don't do those kind of math games because it's too hard when you service customers in so many different industries, and each one has their sort of unique nuances within the stack of things that we include in a managed service offering. We have customers that are managed services and nothing else. We have others that the reason we do their managed services is because we deal with their line of business application and they don't want to have finger pointing as to which company is responsible for what. And we have others where we only deal with the line of business because they have their own internal IT or they have another MSP. So it's very hard in like, to Jason's point, context is everything. And that's why I won't play that little math game of how many.
Okay, well, I'm going to get mad at both of you because I like playing math games. I think everything is figure outable with metrics, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the metrics that are precisely advertised in the industry. I think you can move a couple of pieces together depending on, what your focus is. In your case, Jim, I would imagine that understanding the backlog of work at any given time should inform how many technicians you have, right? So you talk about those special projects. If you understood how much project work was out there in the wind, then you would know, like, I have enough work for 2 months worth of straight work. And I know that on average over the last year, we consistently add to that number this percentage, right? So I can employ this many people and still like keep a little bit of a backlog, so we're not like sitting around with nothing to do. But then, we're also not making people wait forever for stuff getting done. And on the same breath, we do like a bit of a mix of both for how we determine on the MSP side, right? So if you think about the standard metric of figuring out your cost for whatever you're going to charge your customer, you look at the amount of support as being, it's usually like a 1.5 hours a month is what you would usually bank on. That might be higher or lower. You could go and look at an aggregate of data for your own MSP over time. But for us, it was about an hour and a half per endpoint. So, you use that to help inform what kind of service cost is going to go into your per user or per device cost. And then if that's what you're promising in your contract, then you need to make sure you have enough techs that if every single one of those computers asked for an hour and a half worth of work, that you can cover that, right? So like those numbers all kind of shake out in the wash. There's also, the idea that your labor efficiency ratio should only be so much of your overall like taken. And you need to know how on that labor efficiency ratio, you need to know how well the labor is that you have. Like to your point where it's not it's not exactly the same, and MSPs are different, Jason. The ways that they can be different is the skill set of the technicians, right? So you can have, I've seen some MSPs that just literally have all level 3s, but they have very little technicians, and everybody does everything. And because they're highly skilled at what they do, they complete everything very quickly, right? But then do you have a lot of turnover because they're bored? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of like things to consider about your makeup that might contribute to what that looks like. And we tend to take a lot of green people in, like not too many at one time, but like at least one, so that we are training the next, level, but then we're also bringing in people with fresh eyes. Because the one thing that I've found when you have level 3s doing stuff all the time is like they see like the possible biggest disaster versus like what's the simplest thing that could be true. And there's different approaches. I don't think one is better than the other. I think it's all just dependent on your client base. But like, have you guys seen that stuff at all within your org when you think about it now that I've described it the way that we do it?
Yeah, I think we also do that. Like, we try to put the right person paired with the right topic. We really try to do that, but there are plenty of times when an L3 has to go solve the most mundane password problem because that's who's available and the customer's in pain. We've also had level 1s take a crack at something that they technically didn't know anything about, or at least they didn't say they knew anything about, and we hadn't trained or reviewed their knowledge, and they managed to help because a lot of helping is trying and jumping into the deep end and being willing to sort of like help the customer regardless of the maybe personal expense or whatever. So yeah, I think that every MSP and every tech at every MSP will change the dynamic situationally.
Yeah, that's where the numbers sometimes feel a little grating, right? Like, I think that's what you were trying to say, Jason, is like, it's really difficult to say, hey, these numbers are exactly what we need, because it's also dependent on who's in the house, right?
It does. So we have the org chart, we have the one big team, but the org chart kind of defines, this is typically your lane, but you may change lanes if we need you to, and vice versa.
All right, guys, we're going to jump into the next one. I feel like I could do a whole session on that one specifically, though. How long does it take to deploy to a client? So I'm sure many of us have seen the ads on here with cartoons saying this employee's on day 21 and still doesn't have a laptop yet. And I haven't clicked, but assume it's one of those companies that deploys and retrieves equipment. My question is, are any of us dealing with any clients or hear of any internal IT departments that take 3+ weeks to deliver a system to a new hire? I know we aren't the only ones who consistently have clients tell us 24 to 48 hours before an onboarding or even day of FFS, which we all know what that means. Even in those cases, we are still getting a laptop delivered in 72 hours or less typically. We have a client who told us Friday at 4 p.m. They have a new hire starting today at 9 a.m. Anyways, the only laptop that they have available just came in Friday from an offboarding. We need to re-image. That will be done today and sent via UPS today, arrive tomorrow. This seems typical to me. You have to have some serious internal issues if it's taking 3+ weeks. How long does it take your MSP to deploy a computer?
Jason, do you want to take a stab at this first? You're more on the front line. I'm going to give you my utopia answer, so you go.
Sure. So we actually have two kinds of customers. We have some co-managed customers where they have their own inventory and they have an on-site person that's kind of managing the inventory for turnover. And so it's same day usually, and they don't have to worry too much about a whole bunch of things. And then we have customers that we do all the management for, and we have their inventory and there's shipping involved. These are typically your work from home type situations, and it's dependent. If we have the inventory, it'll ship out the day the ticket comes in. And so you have a 2 or 3 day, lead time effectively. I guess it depends on where you're shipping from, where you're shipping to, if you're paying for the overnight. We give customers the option, but we typically just do the standard shipping. I guess the wrench here is if you had to procure the hardware, and if the customer had some really rigid hardware requirements, you might have a pretty long lead time on that hardware. But otherwise, 3 weeks does seem pretty excessive to me.
Yeah. I'm going to paint this picture from an owner and business process freakazoid that likes things to be done a certain way and just wants everything to always be sort of worked out. From customer notification to user ready and onboarded, it depends if hardware is involved or not. Like if the hardware is already at the site and it's just a new hire sitting at an existing desk, I feel like even day of hires, we could probably get it done. For if it's a managed customer, we would prioritize that, and we could probably get it done in an hour or two. Just clear whatever somebody else is working on and say, okay, slide this next ticket in and let's get this person onboarded so that they're not wasting their first day at work. But if there is no advance notice, and we're not part of the HR process of hiring and stuff like that, and there's hardware involved, all bets go out the window. But let's pretend that all the stars align and that we send the quote within the day we get notified. They sign it on the same day, fund it in the same day, and we place the order at the distributor the same day. Let's just say that's Monday. They notified us, they signed the quote, and we approved it perfect day Monday. The vendor ships hopefully Monday, sometimes Tuesday. Hopefully we'll get it Tuesday or Wednesday. So we're now at day 3, 72 hours have elapsed, right? When we have the machine in our hands, or if it goes drop ship, we use IMIBot. I'm very proud that we use IMIBot. It took us a long time to get to the point where IMIBot actually works for us the way we want it to. But we can have a machine ready. If it's a non-CAD customer, we could probably have them somewhat productive 1 to 2 hours, depending on the speed of the internet connection at that site, and depending on how up to date that laptop or desktop shipped out of the vendor. If it came to us, we would do our darndest to get it ready and pack it right back up and ship out. We have it on a roadmap to hopefully by next year be able to always drop ship. But that's the utopic business owner. I would like it to be that way because it adds a day or so of delay to bring it to us, adds costs in shipping, etc. And that's a little friction for us and the customer and a lot of back and forth. The truth is, if it's like an existing machine that's getting repurposed, depending on the speed of the machine as well as the speed of the internet at that location, we could wipe the machine and redeploy it sometimes as quickly as an hour, sometimes 4 hours, depending on the age of the machine. But the idea that idea of a 72-hour onboard when hardware is present, that scares me as a business owner. And I think if my team is watching and hearing this, they're saying, "Oh, here he goes on the soapbox with the broken record."
What is it you like to say, Jim? I'm a little bit extra, and when I'm not, a little bit of extra a lot.
Yeah, I'm extra, and when I'm not extra, you better watch out because I'm extra, a lot extra. First interview statement, not question. I sort of feed that to potential new hires. I'm extra.
Yeah. I actually skipped, so sorry. The bottom is for the next topic that we're going to have, but I just want to weigh on this one really quick. I think this is really dependent on your communication. I think you guys both touched on this. Your communication with your client is key in terms of expectation. We do tend to do something so different than you guys. We're not shipping out a lot of stuff. A lot of our clients are local for us. We're dealing with a lot of local business. So we tend to keep some laptops and standard desktops in stock so that when we get those last minute requests, we're like, okay, does this standard thing work for what you're looking for? Great. And then we send it out. So having a little bit of inventory, man, did that help during COVID? I think we got approached at one point. Would you like to get this deal on laptops? I think we ordered 50 laptops, and it was a huge investment, but we could see the forest for the trees. And they all left. They were all gone. So having a little bit of inventory helps with this. But I think too, I don't think you can compare an MSP to internal because you have to remember that internal has these silos of who's doing what, right? So HR is a silo, hiring is a part of HR. Oh, hi, puppy. And there's these different sections that all, need to work together and they need to domino, and that needs to be acknowledged too. They all have, their purpose, their need, and sometimes that means that depending on what's going on for them, it could be taking longer. Maybe the licensing needs to go through finance or whatever the case is. 3 weeks does seem excessive. However, I could see like a hardware being an issue. I could see if somebody else needed to have something sent back and whatever. So like, I don't know that 3 weeks as an attribution to deploy is correct, because we don't know what system and process they have in place behind it, right? So what's the system and process that took 3 weeks? Yes, Kevin, the puppy needs its own show. All right, are we ready to go on to the topic we should have gone to the last time? Sorry, guys. Okay. What is everyone doing around change management? I'm talking specifically about change approvals and change management for client systems, not just our own internal systems. I'd love to know about systems which know who the approvers are, who can approve for each system, create an easy to follow change approvals for auditing, has a log interface portal for change approvers, know which types of change needs. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the person wants to know if you have something like this and called it a unicorn. I think that's pretty accurate. Do you guys even use change management at all in your org?
Yeah, we do. We have to.
What do you use it for?
Without everything. Without change management, you're lost in everything that you do. Just like without communication, you can't have good customers and you can't be a good MSP. Change management in policy and documentation and procedure internally, change management for how you handle a thing for a customer, change management on behalf of your customers that require compliance, whether it's ISO or SOC. Most of these types of things we can go through and we can check all the boxes really easily because we know we're doing the security. We know about the technical piece, but that's not the pain of being compliant. And the pain of any of this, it's all documentation and change management. It's easily followed audit and log trails. And I think the crux of the question there was, who has the unicorn? We have a system. I won't call it perfect. It's certainly not your unicorn, but we do have a system for change management. We use it every single day. And I think you have to. I think all mature MSPs have to.
How about you, Jim?
Then I'm very immature because I rely a lot on LionGuard to track change events and swing and drift away from what things were supposed to be. And while when new things are being rolled out, we do have planning meetings and what have you. We are not in compliance industries except for credit card compliance. And now that everything is like PCI out of scope from our line of business applications, we don't do business in compliance industries mostly because of that. Because it's hard enough to get a tech to write a ticket or link a configuration, and it's hard enough to interact with customers and keep them happy, and try not to be overly technical. And if you're going to send them a change management thing for an approval, you would expect or want that the person on the other side is at least somewhat technical enough to know. So if we did advise a customer, hey, this upcoming change, I need you to approve it, the first thing out of their mouth is going to be like, that's what I pay you for. We're sort of very boutiquey, and they don't want to know. Our customers, even the ones that say they want to know, the minute we start the conversation and it gets all geeky and nerdy and technical, they're like, what are you talking about? And we lose them. So I think we just sort of like walk with one foot in front of the other, and we try to be cautious about what we're doing, and we try to follow our internal consistent processes. Document, if you're not following documentation, you're writing it for the next time you have to do this, or to remember how it was deployed. You're linking the right assets together in your documentation portal or what have you. But to actually go through and have approvals on things, that's not in our world. It's not in our wheelhouse, and maybe it will be at some point. But day by day, I think we have bigger fish to fry, and living the journey of keeping the customer happy and our techs happy, so that delivers us profitability and happiness at the corporate level, is just, it's like a recursive loop that I think works for us more than keeping track of every change that was ever made, because if we really needed to, we could probably discover it, but just not at a glance.
So Amanda asked for this earlier, and now she's going to get it. So I heard Jim say we don't do change management, and then immediately say we use LionGuard. So you do change management. You just don't do the approval process, which is okay. You don't have to have an approval for it to be change management.
Right. It's change documentation in arrears, right? Because LineGuard will inspect 24 hours later. So if you changed a setting, right, and you changed it for an hour, you did whatever you wanted to do and changed it back, LineGuard might not detect that if it's not logged. And those are the places where sometimes a change management process with an approver and with an audit trail that it was done and by whom could be very beneficial, but I don't think that affects our customers and our industry. So,
well, I'm going to weigh in between the two of you, because there's so many facets of change management. I think Jason's doing all of them, but let's talk about it because Kevin pointed it out in the comments. He was talking about the tool side and then the process side. So that's two sides, but then there's the internal versus external. So we chose to focus more on the internal change management and really utilize the tool as well to kind of get adoption on that. And a really great example of that is our documentation. So a lot of times in an MSP, documentation is a free-for-all. Like everybody can just add stuff to documentation and you kind of hope that they do. But the problem is then you have no like guarantee as to the same way that all MSPs are not created equal, all technicians are not created equal and maybe don't all have the same grasp of the English language, and also might forget that they have, and this is the soap I will die on this, that might have forgotten that they've made the same document already, and I'm truly trying not to swear, and then somehow you end up with 10 documents in your documentation system that all say to do the same thing, but maybe slightly different, but it was made by the same person. Anyway, the point being that like having a process for your processes is like, it's no different than having a naming scheme. It's just making things clear so everybody can understand how to get it, how to access it, what it looks like, what good looks like, and what the expectation is. So we institute change management on our documentation first. Nothing goes into our documentation system unless it's been inspected by our CAB internally to make sure that it fits the standard. The standard is clear. Every new employee is trained on the standard, and it makes everything so that it's cohesive internally. Yes, like I said, Jason's the hill I will die on. And like every client like kind of needs to have like that standard checked, make sure that they have what they need to have in terms of what they're supposed to have documented on at least a yearly basis. Auditing should be happening. And I think if you at least audit your documentation, and Jim, if you're not doing this, I will just call Trisha and explain to her how to do this and she'll make sure it happens.
yeah, we are automating a lot of it. Like LineGuard dumps a lot of stuff of very fresh data into Hoodoo every day, and we have some workflows that we've developed that pump other information in there, SIP drives, all 365 information into Hoodoo. So we are documenting as much automated as possible because of what you said. If you're going to leave it to someone, they're either not going to get to it or they're going to create the same thing over and over again manually, right? And the language barrier, I could even get past that. Where it bothers me is if you have 3 documents and they all go about the same solution completely differently from one another. And if you're the new guy or the person picking up the pieces, which of these did you follow and where do I pick up and jump in? That's a bigger challenge, I think. And I think that happens. I've heard it in many of these discussions over years. That happens a lot across many MSPs.
They have to be your single source of truth. Like that's the way it should be. If you want your people to use it, then don't make it convoluted or hard to read. All right. Well, I have enjoyed having you guys on. I have to talk about events next, I believe. I don't know if I just get to say things until that happens, but so ASCII Edge Dallas coming up September 17th. The Tech Bar September 18th. This will be a virtual event. Join those. Those are always fun if you've never been to one before. ScaleCon 2025, September 25th to 27th in New Orleans. And then IR Games. If you've never been to IR Games, like it's phenomenal. Highly recommend Bob. And if you've never participated, go put your name in. Okay. And the other thing I was going to say is I get to go to my first event in my new role at AVIC. I'm going to be at MSP Summit next week. So if anybody's listening and are going to that, please come by and see me. Jim, just drive up and come see me. I'll be in Orlando, and I'll be at a nice resort for Universal. So you can come hang out at the pool with me.
Maybe.
Bring the doggo.
Maybe. Are we allowed to talk about other events? Because I just got an updated invitation, right? A boom in February in Las Vegas. I just got an updated invitation. There's a SIP certification journey that kicks off there. So it's a pre-date at Right of Boom for SIP. If you're a SIP user, I can tell you this is the SIP edition of Don't Leave the Defaults. I've been to the M365 edition. I could tell you this one promises to be better, stronger, and more focused on the MSP way of doing things, not the Microsoft way of doing things.
I think anytime Kelvin plans training, it's always going to be both informative and a good time, and maybe slightly abusive towards the attendees. We'll see. But in a way that helps you learn, like not in a way that's negative that leaves you with trauma. I mean, I don't know. But yes, also, I would just like to plug, and hopefully it's okay. I just started my newsletter, or we restarted the Frankly IT newsletter with AVIC, so come check that out weekly. I'll make sure there's a link somewhere down below, but would love to hear from other people. What kind of stuff that MSPs run into. I don't have the link. The showrunners asked me if I have the link. I don't have the link right now, but I will make sure the link goes in the comments, so that way it can be added where it needs to go. I'll send it to you at another time. But I just want to thank both Jason and Jim for, there's the link for the cyber drain one. But thank you for joining me, especially we kind of put this together a little last minute, so you guys kind of rolled with it, and I'm glad that there was no pictures of Geraldine, there was no roasting. I'm just super appreciative of that. There's not enough time to bring that up, so thankfully we can get past that. Wasn't too bad for your first time, right, guys?
Absolutely. I'll be glad to do these with you whenever you want, Amanda.
Okay. Well, Jim, I did say when we were in the intro, I was like, Jim, you're a yapper like me, so we'll be good, right? Jason, you're quieter, but I think if we said that you go on Tech Bar where you get a couple of drinks beforehand, I think it might be a different story. We'll put a karaoke mic in front of you and see what happens if you get to rap this time.
Let's not.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and that's
Thank you.
That's it for today.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
This has been a broadcast of the MS